Greetings to everyone from Austin. I regret that I cannot be in San Diego for the 15th annual Communication in the Millennium and to join in the conversation. But it's an important conversation, especially in this time of turmoil. And the fact that it's been a 15-year-long conversation says a great deal about the dialogue between Turkish and American scholars of communication and some of our colleagues from other countries as well. It also says a great deal about the maturity of our field, which is still less than 100 years old, that we have a great deal to say to each other and that we are greatly stimulated by talking with each other. So, Enjoy your conversation. I regret that I cannot be with you, but I definitely am with you in spirit.
A consummate academic scholar, Maxwell Elbert McCombs was the Jesse H. Jones Centennial Chair in Communication Emeritus at the University of Texas at Austin. Internationally recognized for his research on the agenda-setting role of the news media in the formation of public opinion, he lectured at universities in more than 30 countries around the world. He collaborated on the first agenda-setting study with his dear friend, the late Donald Shaw, a professor emeritus at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, during the 1968 presidential election. Their friend and colleague David Weaver, now professor emeritus at Indiana University, joined McCombs and Shaw to launch major agenda-setting studies shortly afterward. From 1994 to 2014, McCombs enjoyed annual summer research visits to the University of Navarra in Pamplona, Spain, accompanied by his wife, Betsy, and their sons, Max and Sam. McCombs also held a faculty appointment at Catholic University in Santiago, Chile, and was a visiting professor at Diego Portales University in Santiago and at the University of Vienna. Of special pride among his international travels was a 2-month trip around the world with his family in the summer of 1999, including visits to Spain, Singapore, Australia, Tahiti, and Chile. McCombs was a co-founder in 2003 of Communication in the Millennium, an annual research conference alternating between the US and Turkey. He received honorary doctorates from the University of Antwerp in Belgium and Catholic University in Chile. He is a past president of the World Association for Public Opinion Research and a fellow of the International Communication Association. McCombs wrote many books, the most recent being The Power of Information Networks, co-edited with Lei Guo at Fudan University in Shanghai, and the third edition of Setting the Agenda, The Mass Media and Public Opinion, co-written with Sebastian Valenzuela at Catholic University in Santiago. His books have been translated into 8 languages. McCombs also supervised 44 doctoral dissertations at UT. He published more than 100 articles on journalism and mass communication.
Hello everybody, this is a special session. We are dedicating this session to Professor Maxwell McCombs. We have several participants in this session. First of all, I would like to start with Dr. Enric Ordeix because he doesn't have enough time. So let's listen to his views and also nice wishes, good wishes about Professor McCombs. And then we will carry on with other professors. Yeah, Dr. Ordeix, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity. I wonder if I can share my screen. Max Albert McCombs Memorial. So this is a very nice opportunity to make a nice recognition on his contribution in communication. He's a prominent figure in communication studies, as you know, best known for his pioneering work in agenda setting theory alongside Donald Shaw. Agenda setting theory was introduced in 1972, and that had helped to understand many other phenomena like presidential elections in 1968. So media cannot dictate, but we can understand media better thanks of him, I would say. This groundbreaking insight has since become cornerstone of media and communication research, illustrating how news media shapes public perceptions by highlighting certain issues while downplaying others. McCombs' work has had widespread recognition, earning him accolades in both academic and professional spheres. His influence extends globally, and he has published extensively in media effects, the constitution of public opinion, and the evolution of media and modern society. So I have to say that the agenda setting of McCombs has contributed to the field of framing and referring, understanding, and how media presentations influences public opinion and priorities. His work has shaped the way researchers and professionals, the way we think about media impact on society and remains foundational in communication theory today. If I have to say what his contribution has been in public relations, are 5 elements here. One is to help the analysis of opinion leaders and key actors in our campaigns, set topics to achieve high impact into the media agenda. Now we know what topics are the best ones because now we know what agendas are, and now we know that we want to influence them. Third is high comprehension of the public's interest. To know how the publics are behaving, it's a big help to understand public opinion. So we're not talking anymore about crystallization of public opinion. We're talking about public opinions crystallization, because there are many opinions, many publics. Last but not least, he helped the current analysis and he helped by creating the current analysis we have to structure stakeholders maps. So while we understand our stakeholders, which is very common now, we have to thank him for being the pioneer in making us understand what the public and what the stakeholders is. All in all, what I have to say is that he has been an asset for public relations and for the corporate communication world. And I have to thank, obviously, you for giving me the opportunity to obviously help thank him, despite this is an honor. Thanks to thank him for making my classes easy, for making our public relations industry better. And this is what I want to say. Thank you so much.
Dr. Enric, thanks so much. Now we're going to carry on with Professor Serra Görpe. She's just next to me. So now she's going to talk.
Thank you. Okay. So I was mentioning that when it comes to saying things in the legacy of Professor Maxwell McCombs, so many memories come to my mind. And I actually want to find a meaningful way to convey them to you. What I want to say is the feelings are as important as what you think of them. I just want to share with you how I met with Professor McCombs. I was introduced to him by Dr. Werner Severin, who many of you likely to know as the author of the famous communication theories book, which he co-authored with Professor Tankert. Long time back, Dr. Severin was visiting Istanbul, Türkiye, and at that time I was working at Istanbul University. He wanted to meet with Istanbul University Faculty of Communication, and my dean requested me to arrange a meeting. So he was a retired professor from UT at Austin, and he thought that it would be good for me to meet Professor McCombs and be a visiting scholar. Around that time, I also had the privilege to meet with Professor Erkan, who visited Istanbul University with his supervisor, Professor Uğur Demiray. And both Professor Demiray and my dean, Professor Gezgin, were actually instrumental in facilitating our visit to University of Texas at Austin. Professor McCombs welcomed my visit, and along with my colleague, Dr. Erkan Yüksel, we embarked our journey to the US as visiting academics. As we all know, Professor McCombs is an incredibly productive scholar. During my time with him, I came to see not only his academic brilliance, but also his kindness, his humility, and dedication as a mentor and supporter. And not only him, but his family, his wife, Betsy, they all warmly welcomed us. And one might assume that when the visiting term ends, the connections we form would fade, but that was not the case from his side. He continued to stay in touch with us, offering guidance and encouragement on our academic paths. In fact, the 20th symposium we are organizing today has come to fruition thanks to his support and belief in us. We will always remember him not only for his remarkable contributions to the field, but for his lasting impact on my career and on our careers as well. I think he's a guiding light, an inspiration to his countless students and colleagues. And today we're honoring him, not only his contributions to the field, but also to the profound impression he has left on us. At the beginning, maybe it wasn't so clear because of the connection issues. What I wanted to say was, until this morning, I wasn't sure what I would say in this session attributed to him. Rather than what I think of him, I just wanted to concentrate and share with you what I felt with him when I was a visiting scholar at UT at Austin. And he was an excellent, brilliant and kind and very modest academic that I have met in my life. Thank
Professor
you.
Görpe, thank you very much. Now I would like to carry on with the list we have on the conference program. Now Professor Yüksel is going to talk about this commemoration.
I have a long speech, so I won't pass me to other speaker who will be. I want to talk at the end of the session, please, because I don't want to
Okay.
wait.
Yeah, okay, then we can maybe carry on with Professor David Weaver.
I'm a retired professor of journalism from Indiana University, where I taught for nearly 38 years. And much of my career I owe really to Dr. McCombs. Max McCombs and Donald Shaw were young professors of journalism at the University of North Carolina when I first met them in the fall of 1971, as I began the PhD program in mass communication research there. They were the original pioneers of the agenda-setting function of mass media, and their seminal article on that subject was published 50 years ago, well, more than 50 years ago now, in Public Opinion Quarterly. I worked with them on a second agenda-setting study that was carried out in 1972, the three-wave panel study. It was a follow-up to the original 1968 study that established the idea of agenda setting. And then again, I worked with them again in 1976 on a 9-wave panel study of the entire presidential election year. Over the years, more than 50 years, Donald Shaw, Max McCombs, and I have co-authored many articles and book chapters and several books dealing with agenda setting research as it became more complex and popular as a theory of the relationships between media, public, and policy agendas. Sadly, Donald Shaw passed away in October of 2021, which was a huge loss for both of us, and now we have lost Max as of early September. It's really impossible, I think, to overstate how much Max influenced my career. When I first went to Chapel Hill, I was intending to study history and law. And after taking his beginning research methods course in the fall of '71, I changed my emphasis to quantitative research, social science research on media effects. Max was a unique person because it wasn't just methodology that he taught. He emphasized in his own persuasive way the need for parsimony and clarity, organization and conciseness to make sense of many different ideas and data. He emphasized the use of metaphor in theory, especially theory honed by what he called Occam's razor to describe, explain, and predict mass communication processes and effects. He tried to get his students, including me, to strike a useful balance between being overly simple and overly complex, something that seems more difficult to do as the number of studies in our field and the media landscape have expanded exponentially. In his own research, Max managed to strike a nice balance between theoretical and applied research with a continuing program of more general academic research on agenda setting, and also as director of the American Newspaper Publishers Association News Research Center, where he and his colleagues produced innovative studies of newspaper content and readership that were of direct value to those working in journalism, as well as those teaching and studying it. During his entire career, Max consulted with a wide range of news organizations on various research projects. And as director of this News Research Center, he was able to fund numerous studies that had both practical and theoretical value. But for me, Max was one of these people who was, I would say, almost charismatic. I mean, he could convince you of the worth of what you were doing, and he always encouraged everybody he came in contact with, all of his students, encouraged them to push ahead with their own research ideas. He was also very generous. He and I created this concept called need for orientation, and actually he had a lot to do with that. I would say more than I did, but he always gave me credit for it. He always said that I was the one who created this. So I think nobody in our field better illustrates the advantage of building a cumulative pattern of research over time than Max. There are very few people in our field who have had as much impact on communication research as they have, as Max and Don Shaw have. So in closing, I would just say I was very lucky to come to North Carolina in 1971 and to be able to study with Max and with Don Shaw. It shaped my whole career. It's a great loss to me personally for Don Shaw and Max McCombs not to be with us anymore. Thank you.
Professor Weaver, thank you so much. Shall we carry on with Professor Christina Ogan?
I say it's interesting that I follow Dave in his discussion of his relationship with Max, because we were both at North Carolina about that time, although I came a little later. My husband Pekin and I left Turkey, and we came to North Carolina for my husband's doctoral program in the business school at North Carolina. And I was teaching at North Carolina Central University, about 10 miles up the road from Chapel Hill. So I had no intentions of going back to school specifically to study communication research. I thought maybe since we had at that time plans to return to Turkey, that the best thing for me to do would be to study speech and hearing therapy, because there were no speech pathologists in the whole country of Turkey at the time. But when I pursued that a bit, they said, well, you'd have to go back and do another master's degree and then go on to a PhD. And we didn't have that much time because we thought we were returning to Turkey. So there we were. And after about a year, Pekin says to me, I think you ought to go back and get a PhD too, because if you don't and I do, it's not going to be good down the line. And so after about a year and a half, I decided to start the program one course at a time while I was still teaching full-time up the road. It was either my very first course or my second course that I took from Max McCombs. And like for Dave, that changed everything in my world, although it didn't, I arrived too late into the program to hook up with their study of their first agenda setting study. So really what I have to say about Max, in addition to the great inspiration he was to me in that first class, I took that research methodology class that Dave refers to, and it was there that I thought, oh, this could be a thing I do in my life, not what I had really planned to do going forward. He somehow made research methodology exciting, and for most people, it just isn't a thing that's exciting to do. And at the same time, one day, I think he took me aside and said, you know, there's this book I'd like to show you. I think you might be interested in it, especially since it's also about Turkey. And I said, oh, yes, I'd love to read it. And the book was Daniel Lerner's The Passing of Traditional Society, about which most of you have probably never heard. But at the time, he was one of the most famous sociologists around. And he had embarked on a study of the Middle East and took a kind of sociological, anthropological approach to this. And in the beginning of that book, there was, if you have not read it, you should look at least at that part, the parable of the grocer and the chief. And the chief was the muhtar in the village, and the grocer was the bakkal. These are Turkish words for these. And he went to visit them in this small town. And he took translators with him, students that he had recruited from universities in Ankara. And he went to Balgat, which is then a village now filled with, you can't even find Balgat when you go to Ankara today. It is filled with high-rise buildings everywhere. At the time, they didn't even have a bus line from Ankara out to Balgat. So he talks with these people and he learns about their ideas and about how, and established a theory of development in communications that led from people being villagers and part of a traditional society to be on the trajectory to be a modern society. Well, this book at the time really was impressive to me. And without Max, I probably never would have come upon it. I never would have thought about going on to study migration, which is what I kind of have been obsessed with most of my career, migration and communication. But sadly, I didn't have I came at the wrong time to be able to be engaged with any kind of research in agenda setting. So over time, I didn't see much of Max except at conferences. And when we did, usually there would be a drink or a dinner that we would go out to with fellow colleagues. And so over the years, he became a friend and not just a mentor to me, as he was in the beginning. And one time, the time that I will remember fondly, we were, all three of us, Don Shaw and Max and I, were invited to give talks at Istanbul Kültür Üniversitesi. And so we went there, and we happened to stay in the same hotel where there were no other conference participants. And the hotel was the Titanic. I've always wondered why this hotel chain named itself the Titanic, and thought someday it would all collapse. But no, it's still a very popular hotel chain around Europe. So Max and Don and I spent our evenings having dinner over a glass of wine usually. And the wine, of course, was always selected by Max because he knew the best wines to drink. And he either purchased them so that we would taste them, or he was the person to order them. And so it is that because Max ordered the wine. And it's early in the morning here still, late there. I urge you all to raise a glass. Thank you.
Professor Ogan, thank you very much for your emotional speech. Now, maybe we can carry on with Dr. Hassan Raza Syed from Taylor's University.
Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Hassan Raza. I'm Associate Professor at Taylor University School of Media. So it is great honor to participate in the memorials session for the Maxwell McCombs. He remained like as a visionary pioneer in our study. Being a young scholar, he was inspiration for all of us. I had a very little experience with him when he reviewed my paper. I have a great memory that what sort of mentor and what sort of great man he was. He sent me a message to appreciate. I asked him to acknowledge him in my publication, and that was the time we initially learning about agenda setting. It was our initial career. So he was a great person that he gave us a special time, and that make my mind for his greatness all the time, apart from his role in media studies, because being a scholar, we started working on public opinion. We start learning a lot of things coming from that end. So it is a great moment, a great loss, in fact, but as a media scholar, we all have great impression of McCombs' work in our careers. Apart from career, being as a human being, I must say that he was a very, very great human being, because our experience with him, interaction with academic interaction, he always guided us, even we know he's very, very busy person, and we had an impression like a great tourist, and but he, as being a human being, he introduced us a best side of us, best person, I must say. So this is a great loss for field. Also, we lose a great human being, a great mentor who gave you a time like fatherly behavior, I must say, and the way he guided us is amazing. Thank you very much for your team to make us part of this great event. Thank you.
Syed, thank you so much. Now maybe we can carry on with Emenyeonu Ogadi from University of Sharjah.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but we can't see your video now.
Yeah. Outside. I'm using my phone. I'm trying to put it on.
We can hear you very well.
Okay. I'll try to see if the phone, the video will work. But let me start by thanking you for the opportunity to be part of this panel discussing the life and times of Prof. McCombs, who's a pioneer. I call him a colossus in the study of public opinion and mass communication. There can be really a better way to honor or pay tribute and celebrate his life than this profound academic engagement. Having said that, I grew up embracing the works of Prof. McCain way back in 1996 as a postgraduate student of mass communication. In my student days, his work essentially, provided me with the foundational, the basic framework for understanding the influence of media on public opinion, policies, and even societal values. In those days, we studied his theories, especially the agenda setting theory in courses like journalism, media studies. It also extended to political communication and sociology. And that's why I call him a colossus. This agenda, his agenda setting theory, basically, laid the groundwork for people like us then to understand and analyze how media priorities shape social and political outcomes. In my doctoral studies, I utilize his agenda setting theory extensively in my thesis. So he's a huge influence in my academic journey. And right now, as an academic, the agenda setting theory is one of my favorite theories, and I don't miss an opportunity to teach to my students. Prof. McCombs was a huge influence to me, and I'm sure to most of us in this room today. I'm sure even to millions of people globally. Basically, we may not understand or comprehend exactly his contributions to the development of mass communication, but his contributions really are monumental. It's sad that he is gone. That is the way to go. He has passed on, but definitely his name and his legacies will live on. We hope and pray that he rests in peace. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Emenyeonu Ogadima. And now we can carry on with our Dean, Professor Bülend Aydın Ertekin.
Thank you very much, Dr. Paksoy. I briefly also express my feelings about him as the person that I knew him also a long time ago, 20 years ago. So it is by this occasion, and I want to share my feelings. Today in this session of the symposium, we come together not only to remember Professor Maxwell McCombs, who left us recently and live in great sorrow in the hearts of their loved ones, but also to honor the memory of Professor McCombs with great respect and love through this symposium. Professor McCombs, as one of the co-chairs of the communication in the Millennium Symposium, defended the idea that communication plays a central role in shaping society the way we understand our world, as a great scholar. So his pioneering work on agenda setting theory transformed our understanding of media influences, teaching us that what gets highlighted by the media profoundly shapes public opinion and our collective priorities. This symposium, and in fact, and now a fixture for scholars or practitioners worldwide, stands as a testament to his vision. So it fosters that the exchange of the ideas, encouraging us to think critically about the evolving role of the communication. So in today's fast-paced, interconnected world, the values of the Professor McCombs held their great curiosity and commitment to public knowledge are more relevant than ever. On this occasion, I would like to once again express my condolences to his family and loved ones, students and colleagues of Professor McCombs, whose name and his works continue to live on in every word, in every sentence, in every page, in every station, in every article, and in every book. Thank you very much.
Professor Ertekin, thanks so much. Also, Professor Süleyman İrvan from Üsküdar University is also together with us. Now we can listen to Professor İrvan.
Thank you very much, Professor Aksoy. First of all, I would like to thank Erkan Yüksel for inviting me to this special memorial session for Professor Maxwell McCombs. I would like shortly to talk about my involvement and interaction with agenda setting theory. Actually, unfortunately, I did not meet Maxwell McCombs personally, individually. My first encounter with this theory, agenda setting theory, was in a graduate course on communication theories and research that I took from Professor Churchill Roberts at the University of West Florida in the United States, where I went for my master's degree. Within the scope of the course, we were supposed to write a review article about a theoretical approach. I chose agenda setting theory because I saw the theory as the most relevant theory to journalism, because I was trying to continue my academic career in journalism. Since also I am professor of journalism at Üsküdar University in Istanbul. For the literature review, I started reading every article that was published at that time. The first one was Agenda Setting Function of the Mass Media by Maxwell, McCombs and Dan Shaw, which was published in Public Opinion Quarterly. After reading the article, I first looked at Walter Lippmann's book, famous book, Public Opinion, and then Bernard Cohen's The Press and Foreign Policy. After completing my master's degree, I returned to Turkey and started my PhD at Ankara University. After completing the courses, I started looking for a topic that I could test the agenda setting theory in Turkey during my PhD thesis phase. My thesis supervisor was Professor Oya Tokgöz. She was very knowledgeable about Anglo-American theories, communication theories. And ultimately, under the influence of Bernard Cohen's book, I decided that the topic which I could best agenda setting theory was foreign policy. So I did my PhD study on analyzing Turkish press foreign policy coverage. Indeed, I found a very high correlation between the foreign policy agenda of the press and the foreign policy of the public opinion. During almost the same period, two colleagues from Anadolu University were also working on agenda setting theory, Professor Necdet Atabek and Professor Erkan Yüksel. Three of us, I think, made this theory very popular in Turkey, thanks to McCombs and Dan Shaw. Today, I checked the Higher Education Council's webpage on thesis submitted to Higher Education Council. There are now 61 theses, 17 PhD theses, and 54 master's theses on agenda setting theory. I really thank Maxwell McCombs and wish him to rest in peace. Thank you.
Professor İrvan, thank you so much. I think now we can continue with Dr. Gizem Melek from Queen's University, Belfast.
Hello, thank you, Dr. Paksoy. I'd like to also firstly thank Professor Erkan Yüksel for inviting me to this really meaningful panel. Well, I mean, I'd like to speak about my also experience with him. Even though I don't know him personally, I mean, I've been in contact with him virtually throughout these years. So, I mean, he's been such an inspire to so many of us. So, when I was doing my PhD between 2010 and 15, at some point I felt it was on agenda setting theory. At some point I felt I was stuck and I wasn't able to find the support that I needed because I was going to do something specific analysis. And then I just thought, okay, maybe I should just email him and then see. And, you know, I emailed him within the 24 hours. I received a response and I was super excited. And then I really appreciated it because he never knows me, but he just responded, a random colleague from Turkey, right? Because he doesn't know me. So it was really meaningful for me. And then I realized back then how he was so modest and knowledgeable and he made some really genuine contribution when I asked about that question. And then throughout all these years, whenever I was stuck or when I felt like I needed to ask something, I was always contacting him, along with some Christmas celebration emails. I was also, sending back and forth some emails. So every time I was asking, he was there, always responding and then helping me out. For the past couple of years, I was doing research on network agenda setting and need for orientation. So also it's so meaningful and great to see Dr. Weaver here today as well, because he's also an inspiration. So when I emailed Dr. McCombs, Professor McCombs about that, and he was giving me such great insights and even helpful suggestions and so on. So I was always grateful, and I felt really privileged to have met him, even though it's virtual. So also hearing all of you from different parts of the world talking such nice things about him, about his personality and his character as an academic, so made me feel like, wow, he was such an inspiration. And I feel privileged to have known him, and really, I think he has a lot of impact, I believe, even now, because he was so helpful and nice to me. Now, whenever someone reaches out to me asking questions about the work and so on, so I'm always trying to help them out instantly. So that impact is really, I think, important and I think solid. So my impression about also his character, that he actually is a person who cares so much that he was just there for someone who doesn't know, and then he always helps out. So I think that matters a lot, and I'm so happy to hear all your comments about him. And really thank you a lot for this meaningful panel that you organized, to the entire team and also Professor Yüksel. Thank you for listening to me.
Thanks so much, Dr. Gizem, Melek. I think only 2 speakers left. Now we can carry on with Professor Yüksel.
First of all, I would like to welcome all of you to this special session in memory of Professor Maxwell McCombs. In addition to those of us here in the room, we have colleagues from around the globe joining us online. We also have friends who can't be here right now, but they have sent their video recordings for this meeting. I would like to thank them for that. After these welcomes and thanks, I don't really know where to start, because I think this is the most difficult session and the most difficult moment of this symposium, which I am trying to organize in one way or another for more than 20 years right now. It wasn't until this moment in time that I was able to put together in my mind what I was going to say here. Just a few months ago, I was corresponding with Professor Maxwell McCombs, and we were talking about who to invite to this symposium this year, what to do, how to do, how he could participate in some way. And now we are remembering him with a mercy. In this complex feelings and thoughts, in moments when all the colors blend together in my mind, when I was thinking about what I should say and how I should say it, one of the books I read came to my mind. My professor, Professor Ali Atılpir, recommended a book years ago in 1990s. A book that has been one of the worst best-selling books. Maybe you have read it. Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. When I borrowed this book from the library of the university, I recommended my professor, Professor Ali, and read it for the first time. I didn't understand much. Then I bought it and read it several times over the years. I summarized it. Even I gave it as a gift to my students and my friends on various occasions. For more than 10 years, I have placed this book at the top of the reading lists in my effective communication techniques course. There's a chapter in that book titled Starting with the End in Mind. Who ask us imagine of our own funeral. 4 people will speak at the ceremony. The first person is a family member. The second person is a friend who can tell us something about our personality. The third person is someone from our work or a colleague. And the fourth person is someone from a social organization we served. Kube asked us to imagine who would say that our own funeral. And now we are gathered here to commemorate Professor Maxwell McCombs. Many academics from many countries around the world are paying tribute to him. Of the many lives of Professor McCombs touched while he was alive, only those that I have been able to recognize and those that I have been able to reach quickly in a short period of time, about a month, will be speaking here together today in this commemoration. I believe that if we had a little more time and if we could reach a little more people, many more people would have joined us today to express their thoughts and feelings about him. I stopped for a while and I thought about this. I have a very, very valuable professors in my life, and they are models of my life who guided me, whose guidance I have carried the trace of their guidance at important stages of my life. Professor Maxwell McCombs is one of them, perhaps one of the most important ones. Professor Uğur Demirel, Professor Ali Atıfgir, Professor Haluk Gürgen, Profesör İnal Camaşkun, Profesör Ali Murat Vural, Profesör Halil İbrahim Gürcan, Orhan Gökçe, Suat Gezgin, Engin Ataş, Sezen Ünlü, Şan Özal, Fevzi Sürmeli, Zühtü Altan, Oktay Anlak, Profesör Donald Shaw, Werner Severin, Serra Görpe, Ahmet Yalçınkaya, Erol Özmen, and journalist Önder Baloğlu. These are the names I remember that they touched my life. I would like to thank each of them touching my life and for the impress they left in my life. I believe it's the important thing, people in one's life. I have always expressed this gratitude in my letters to Professor McCombs, especially in the last days of his illness. I also remember now he wrote to me. Actually, I have told the story several times on various occasions from the very beginning. At the end of 1990s, I was writing my PhD thesis. We had decided to cover the issue of privatization in economic journalism with the agenda setting theory. I somehow reached the email address of Professor McCombs, the father of agenda setting theory, through the dial-up internet connection of that day. Then I started writing questions to him about my thesis. I sent him emails after emails. Later, Professor McCombs said that you bombarded me with lots of questions. He answered me my questions without getting tired, bored, or bothered. Like my thesis advisor, Professor Demirel, he guided my thesis more than him. I completed this in 1919. In 2001, we invited Professor McCombs and his close friend, late Professor Donald Shaw, the other father of agenda setting theory, to the symposium on media and manipulation hosted by our faculty in Eskişehir. With the organization of Professor Demirel, we made a short tour of Turkey with 2 cars with Professor Judith Ditters and our friend Mertel Olan. We traveled more than 20,000 kilometers from Istanbul, Konya, Nevşehir, Ürgüp, Göreme, Eskişehir, Istanbul, etc. Professor Uğur Demirel, he was sponsoring all of our expenses with his friends. We gathered many beautiful memories in this visit. A year later, with the scholarship I received from Professor McCombs, I went to the United States as a visiting scholar. I met my friend, Serra Görpe there. With the encouragement of Demiray and Professor Gezgin, we planned this symposium in the United States together with Professor McCombs and Serra Görpe. The name father was Professor McCombs, but in fact, in the notes I took at that time, the first name of the symposium was Communication in the New Millennium. But I realized later that I had written Communication in the Millennium. So, GIM as an abbreviation with the same carelessness, we did it. For the first aim of our symposium was to be a bridge between Turkish and American communication scholars to develop a dialogue between us. In those years, in order to get a grey passport, one had to go back and forth to Ankara twice, and then again for visa. Thanks for this symposium, we got 10-year visa to United States. We started traveling to the US every year, every 2 years. In 2003, about 40 academicians, we attended the first symposium in Austin. And then in more than 20 years, I think more than 1,000 papers were presented and more than 1,000 academics participated in this symposium and presented their papers in English for the first time in their lives, visited the United States and developed communication, cooperation, and dialogue between the scholars. We now have Facebook group. We have more than 700 members there, and we have a web page, the open access web page, and we have Instagram and YouTube channels. In 2003, we planted this seed in the soil, and it has turned into young sapling with the meeting of sun, air, and water, I can say. So what comes in my mind when we think about Professor McCombs as an exemplary person and outstanding academic? The year of Professor McCombs and Donald Shaw published the first agenda setting theory. It was the date I was born, 1972. Over the time, agenda setting theory has evolved into first, second, and third level agenda setting theory. I have also aged over time like childhood, youth, and middle age. In the previous session, we had discussed the detail about agenda setting theory has come from over time. The third level agenda setting theory now focused on the link between the maps in our minds and the media. The most important question is when you think about a person or a topic, what comes to your mind first? I wanted to ask in this session, what comes to your mind first when you think about Professor Maxwell McCombs? I would like to think about the answer of this question. On the other hand, before this meeting, I visited our professor in our department one by one and asked them to this question. I collected their answers. What do you think about that? Let me read the answers. An academician, pioneer, father of a theory, fatherly, calm, musical, humble, kind, intellectual, hardworking, productive, writer, friendly, warm, helpful, faculty member, exemplary professor, valuable person, smiling, sincere, respectful, honest, in favor of truth, in favor of science, a good researcher, an important leader, guiding, supportive, horizon opening, answering all questions in the most relevant way, listening carefully, human communication, Professor Donald Shaw, Professor Werner Severin, Professor Jim Tankard, Professor, who was he? Sorry. These are the impressions formed among the faculty members of our department when we write them down. The cornerstones of the pictures that has formed in our minds over the past quarter of the century. Last time I visited Professor McCombs in Austin before the symposium organized in Los Angeles in 2015, he hosted me at his home. We went together to the university and his desk at the university, a retirement desk, I can say. There was a photo I took with Betsy at the breakfast time together in the table. I couldn't find that picture, but it was one of the best memories in my mind.
Greetings from Minnesota. I'd like to thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share some memories of my dear friend, Maxwell McCombs. I first met Max in April of 2021 when he, Donald Shaw, and I were invited to Turkey to share some of our research. This was the first time that I was presenting internationally and the first time I was working with translators. So I turned to Max for advice. I still remember what he said. I have 3 versions of agenda setting. Agenda setting light, agenda setting medium, and agenda setting well done. He says I just adjust it depending on who it is that I'm speaking with. The second story that I'd like to share is we had several conversations about the agenda setting theory. And I asked him, as a person who taught nonverbal communication, if it was applicable there. Certainly, he said. And amazingly, a year after I was in Turkey, I wrote a paper for the International Communication Association conference in Seoul, Korea. And I'll just share a little bit of the abstract with you. Incorporating a video analysis of news anchor broadcasts following the attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, an argument is made for using nonverbal communication as an affective frame to understand a projection of emotion and creation of intimacy and empathy in crisis news reporting. Hey, Max, thanks so much for the insight, and thanks for putting up with me during that wonderful trip that we had to Turkey. And thank you, Erkan, for giving us all this opportunity.
The reason for this particular talk is that it's in part a tribute to Max McCombs. So the connection that I'm having to your particular annual meeting is through Max. And I know that you'll, as a result of his untimely passing, will be celebrating the man and his work during your annual meeting. And I wanted to use this talk as well to offer my own tribute to Max. Max became a friend and a mentor to me over the last 15 years. You can see that we've written a book together, News and Public Opinion Media Effects on Civic Life. And, you know, it's difficult to put into words that the degree to which, you know, his humility and his wit and his inquisitiveness, how much they will be missed. They already are, and I'm sure you're going to be talking about that a bit during your annual meeting. And so I wanted to use this particular talk and this particular topic is something that I think would strike his fancy. And so in part, the nature of this topic is a tribute to Max. And so I'm sure you'll celebrate him as well.
Hello, everyone. Thank you to the organizers of the 20th International Symposium of the Communication in the Millennium. I am Amy Schmitz-Weiss, journalism professor at San Diego State University in the U.S. I give a special thank you to the organizers for setting up this special session dedicated to Dr. McCombs. Dr. McCombs was an amazing person, scholar, professor, and mentor. I was so grateful to have a chance to take one of his classes while at the University of Texas at Austin as a PhD student, and had a chance to work on a few research projects with him. After I graduated, he remained a great mentor to me, helping me navigate the academic world as a professor. He was so humble and kind, always willing to help young scholars, and always had another research project in mind, ready to go. His impact was not only in the US, but also global, as demonstrated by the numerous translations of his research over the years and his many international university collaborations that he had that will leave a forever mark. You all are gathered now for the 20th year of the symposium, of which Dr. McCombs was a co-founder back in 2003. I was grateful to have a chance to participate in several of the symposia over the years with colleagues from Turkey and the US. I was also grateful to have the opportunity to host the symposium in San Diego and have Dr. McCombs join us for that special symposium in 2011. Dr. McCombs has left such an impact on the media industry and the academy. With his groundbreaking, innovative research into agenda setting, he will truly be missed. And for the symposium, he leaves this very special mark that will be with all of us. He will truly be missed, but his research legacy will forever live on. Thank you.
My name is Esteban Lopez Escobar, and I, apart from the keynote speech that I have sent, I want to add something more personal about Professor Maxwell McCombs, and because he has been a great colleague and friend, and is very instrumental for the existence of your symposium. Max has been an admirable scholar, creative and open to the suggestions of his colleagues and disciples, and very fruitful. The repertoire of his publication is very, very extensive. But I would like now to underline his human qualities. Max eventually came to consider Pamplona, the University of Navarra, as a second home. In fact, the whole of Spain that we traveled through together was a second home for them. I remember that during one of his stays with us in Pamplona, we went to spend a few days at the home of one of my brothers in Malaga. And during that stay we celebrated my birthday in one of the restaurants of the beach. And considering that my brother had a wood wine cellar, and Max was a great expert, when we left Malaga, Max could say that until then he had never drank such quality wines in so few days. As the saying goes, Max was not only a gentleman, but a gentleman. He was cheerful and had a great sense of humor. You felt at ease with him. And to travel with him, with Bessie, with Mas Jr. and son, was a privilege. I am sure he is now receiving the reward he deserves for the work and dedication to his family, to his friends, to his colleagues, and to his disciples. But I miss him, and I will continue to miss him.
I'm talking with Max McCombs, a scholar who's fascinated with broadcast journalism. Along with Donald Shaw, 3 decades ago, Max floated the idea of the agenda-setting function of the media. What's that function?
Well, a good place to begin with an explanation of the idea of agenda setting is actually to go back to Walter Lippmann's classic book on public opinion, published early in the last century. He began that book with a chapter titled "The World Outside and the Pictures in Our Heads." It was Lippmann's thesis that the news media, primarily newspapers in his day, were the bridge between that world outside and the pictures in our heads, that the pictures were a reflection of the media, not necessarily of what was really happening in the world outside. So now the kind of a general explanation of the core of agenda setting would be elements that are emphasized in the media come to be regarded as important among members of the public.
For many years, students have loved the catchphrase that you've talked about in connection with the theory, that the media don't tell us what to think, but they do tell us what to think about. Is that still hold?
The second part holds very much, and that was the beginning point for agenda setting. The media focus our attention. They tell us what to think about. But the first part has to be considerably modified now, because we've gone beyond just the focus of attention to the second point in the communication process. How do we understand this topic? What's our apprehension of the topic? And that's what brings us to what is now called the second level of agenda setting, that it's not just the picture, what the pictures in our heads are about, but at the second level, literally, what are the pictures? Then it often flows very directly that what we think, that is our attitude or our opinion about this, comes very directly from the picture in our head. So yes, we have to modify that expression now. The media not only can tell us what to think about, they can also influence how we think about it, and even by extension, not only what we think, our attitude and opinion, but in some cases, what we do.
Most people talk about news stories, use the term story. Is a story by definition framing, according to your definition?
Very much so. That is, journalism above all involves selection, of deciding to approach a topic from a particular direction and of constructing a coherent story where possible. Now, there are many factual reports that are simply a kind of jumble of facts.
But the kind of stories that you were looking at and continue to in your research, front page, lead story, or any story on network news, broadcast news, these would all be framed?
No, no. If you really look at them closely, many of those are also this same kind of jumbling of facts.
If you were doing a study today, which you probably are, would you include CNN as one of the national news media?
No.
Why?
Because the CNN average total audience is less than the circulation of the Austin American-Statesman. It is a very small audience.
Does the agenda setting function hold just for news stories, or would it also hold with entertainment?
Oh, very, very much so. I mean, the general proposition for agenda setting is about the transfer of salience from one agenda to another. And if you're exposed enough to a particular agenda, whether it's a news agenda, the Jay Leno agenda, or whatever, and it can even extend far beyond media, then people, if that resonates with them, are going to respond. They're going to perceive those elements, whatever they are, as important.
Do you see anything sinister in the idea of agenda setting, that the media would intentionally give a slant to a news story?
Not really. That is, it's important to remember that these agenda-setting effects of the media are the inadvertent byproduct of the fact that the media do have to select a few topics to pay attention to each day. They don't have the capacity to talk about dozens and dozens of different topics every day, nor do audiences really want that much information on that many different topics every day.
How many issues can people focus on at one time? How many can they hold in their mind?
A very small number. The public agenda seldom exceeds 4 or 5 issues maximum, and most frequently is 2 or 3 issues.
Increasingly, people say they don't trust the media, and there's a large group of people who are quite convinced that there's a liberal bias. Is there a liberal bias to?
No. And in fact, there's been a great deal of research on this, and the evidence is simply not there. And indeed, one increasingly could argue for the dominant national media, if there is a bias, it's probably a conservative bias, particularly when you look at the salaries of the major personalities on television. These are not poor people. These are not working class people. These are among the financial elite of our country, and their interests typically do not run to the liberal side of the political spectrum. The evidence suggests that most of the news plays pretty much right down the middle.
Max, if I was better at this, if I knew what you know and had a real working journalist's background, what would have I asked you about the media agenda that I haven't asked?
I suppose you would have asked me, is there any hope this agenda might change, that these very strong norms would in fact become more sensitive to the public? Having some sensitivity to what parts of the media agenda do and do not resonate with the public. And in the case of public issues during a campaign, of in fact asking the people early on in the campaign, what issues are you concerned about? And of then pushing the candidates to talk about those issues. Most journalists are message producers. They are not communicators.
Thank you for dedicating this special session to Max and for inviting me to participate. It's nice to see so many familiar faces. I've enjoyed listening to your thoughts and reminiscences, and I thank you all for your kind words. I guess it was 2003 when Erkan, Yüksel, and Serra, who were visiting scholars at the University of Texas, first approached Max about the possibility of holding a Turkish-American seminar there the following year. Max was impressed with Erkan and Serra's vision and drive. It was no small thing to undertake the responsibilities for planning an international meeting on foreign soil. Max expected the first Turkish delegation to include 5 or 6 scholars. He was astonished the following year when the delegation turned out to be more like 30 or 40. But the seminar went well, and it wasn't long before plans were underway to hold a second meeting the following year, this time in Turkey. And now, here we are, 20 years later. As most of you know, Max's main research interest was agenda setting. He liked to tell his students that when he and Don Shaw, who were both young professors at the University of North Carolina, submitted their original agenda-setting paper to the Association for Education in Journalism, it was rejected. They thought their paper still had merit, though, and a couple of years later, they submitted it to Public Opinion Quarterly. It has since become one of POQ's most frequently cited studies. Dave Weaver, who was a PhD student at UNC, made major contributions to the theory early on, and the three of them, Max, Don, and Dave, remained frequent collaborators and good friends for more than 50 years. Max was very pleased when agenda setting caught the attention of scholars outside of the United States. I think he was partly interested from the perspective of research. Did the studies in other countries yield similar results? But over time, as he met more and more international scholars and traveled to their countries and hosted them in his, many of these research collaborations turned into long-standing friendships as well. I can tell you absolutely that Max's wife and 2 sons were happy to be the beneficiaries of these collaborations and friendships. We traveled to Pamplona, Spain, as a family many, many times. As Esteban said earlier, Pamplona became our second home. We traveled as a family to Korea and Japan. One summer, we went around the world. My sons and I didn't contribute to the scholarly pursuits that took us to most of these places, but we did reap the benefits of foreign travel, the sights, the sounds, the food and wine, the history and culture, and we made lasting memories. And so, on behalf of the McCombs family, I'd like to thank you once again for your gracious tributes to Max. I hope you'll remember him as he remembered you as collaborators, yes, but also as friends.
Thanks so much for your contributions. Today is done, I guess. Tomorrow we are going to carry on with other sessions. Thanks so much and hope to see you next time.